Welcome everybody to this edition of Attention Talk Video. I'm your host, ADHD and Attention Coach Jeff Copper. Are you overwhelmed? Most people with ADHD at some point in time say they're overwhelmed. They say that word, but not many people really think about it. Often I get somebody calls me up and say, I'm overwhelmed. Really? What exactly is overwhelmed? It's a word that's used a lot, rare that everybody ever actually can define it. It's an emotional term. It's a reflexive term. We've talked about that on this YouTube channel. An emotion is a reflexive reaction. You're jumping to conclusion. I'm overwhelmed. Well, often overwhelm is when the cognitive load exceeds your cognitive capacity. Put differently, you got more thinking than you got capacity. Well, if that's the root cause of the problem, then you got to solve for that problem. Now, there's two avenues on this that's really important. Number one, all too often people with ADHD are trying to do too much thinking in their head. Your head's got a very limited capacity, You're trying to do too much in your head, that's where the problem is. You got to externalize it. Of course, externalizing it's tedious and boring, which is a bit of a challenge. A lot of times I talk about managing ADHD is really managing discomfort. It's hard to think inside your head, and it's hard to externalize thinking. Like it or not, you have to work your way through that. The other part of it is that you literally just have too much that's going on. Either way, when you're overwhelmed and the cognitive load is greater than your cognitive capacity, we have two options. Number one, get help, right? Get help thinking. Of course, people with ADHD, they're reluctant. They don't want to get help. They think they should do everything on their own. It's kind of funny. I was coaching a database manager one time who was trying to do his books. And I said, why are you doing that? Well, because I need to do it. And you should be able to do this by myself. I said, well, does your accountant do database work? Well, no, I do it for him. Well, okay, because he's an expert at accounting. He has you do it. You're an expert at databases. So you should have them do your accounting. Get the gist here a little bit? It's all too often people with ADHD are trying to do everything on their own, and they're overwhelmed because they have too many thinking requirements. So number one is get help. Number two is reduce the amount of thinking. Now, I realize that's a catch-22. You got to make a decision which requires thinking, goes back to maybe you should get some help making the decisions to reduce the amount of thinking that you've got to redo that. What's my point? Well, all too often people with ADHD are spitting out words. They're emotional, overwhelmed, but they're not saying, well, what's the real problem here? I'm overwhelmed. I got too much thinking. The ADHD is a thinking impairment. How do I reduce the thinking? You got to problem solve in this direction. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. All too often people are like, can you give me a tip, trick, or strategy? Well, no, because you have to think your way through some of this stuff. Anyway, hope this is at least giving you pause to stop and think. I mean, one of my favorite quotes these days, are you drowned in a sea of strategies or tips? Like either way, it's because all those things are oversimplifying stuff. It really comes down to alleviating the thinking impairment. What do you do about it? You got to problem solve. Often you need to get help. A sign of maturity, particularly for college students, is to go ask for help. I remember when I was in college, I had one of the highest tutoring bills on campus. Now I was lucky because I was a scholarship athlete, all that was covered, but I'm like, why am I doing this the hard way? Why don't I just go ask for help? Got ADHD, ask for help. I hope this is giving you pause to think. Hope it really makes a little bit of sense to you. If you're new to our channel, hit the subscribe button. If you're an existing person, what are your thoughts on this? Does this make some sense? Have you noticed that a lot of ADHD is a thinking challenge and that we need to make thinking easier? Also, if you like what we do, hit the thanks button. We certainly appreciate any donations to push the cause. We do this for you. We make a little bit of money on Google advertising, but not enough to cover the admin costs. So anyway, with that, I hope you've enjoyed this edition of Attention Talk Video. Take care.